Taking care of you is the most selfless thing you can do. If we're not right mentally, emotionally, and physically, we cannot serve others to the highest degree. You are the villain in someone's story. Whether you are a leader, whether you're just any human walking this earth, we've turned ourselves into a villain in someone's story in their eyes.
What leads you to understand or believe that you're the villain in someone's story?
I think it was true masculinity is being able to show vulnerability, is being able to show weakness and show your courage in getting through fear and showing authenticity while being as strong as possible, being able to mess someone up if they're threatening your family, and while being able to be strong and courageous through the storm.
Today, I'm excited. I'm joined by Josh Kosnick. Josh is the owner and founder of Kairos Coaching and Consulting. He's a veteran entrepreneur, a leadership coach, mentor, and consultant by trade. Pulling from his financial services background, we'll get into a bit of that. He also is an EOS implementer, and he uses that to serve clients in many different ways. Josh, excited to be joining you. Exciting that you're sitting in your barn. I'm essentially in my barn. Pasture's right out there. You can look out your window. You see deer roaming around. There might be a few that pop up here. A good Midwesterner like myself. Josh, good to be here with you, man.
Great to be here with you, Tyler. And yes, the deer, especially the bucks, have actually been moving around now that rifle season is done, and they're taunting and laughing at me.
Classic. We just finished late archery here. My brother-in-law just down the road shot a buck, and my son went to help him track it, and they did not find it, which can happen sometimes, archery. But I know what you're getting through as far as the enticement. You look out there and like, you got to wait another year.
Yeah, literally on Monday, the day after, so the weekend was brutally cold. And so I didn't see much. And Sunday, I was willing to take anything. I was looking for a buck all week. Monday, I'm on a Zoom call with a client, and I'm in my office, which has these two big double doors. And the farmhouse sits right outside there, about 20 yards away. Nice buck, outside the ears, runs right past. I swear in slow motion, looked at me, taunted me, laughed at me, and just kept running by.
Yeah. Yep. Well, another year where you get to, hopefully see some of his sons. So, we'll go with that. But
that's right.
Man, as I want to get started in this conversation, is you and I are kind of, going through this. We've known each other from afar, but the first time to really interact. Give me kind of how you got to where you're at today, whether it's from your career background, your incident back, or whatever that is. Help people get to come to grips with who's Josh, what Josh is about, kind of, whether it's the Spartan mask behind you, just help us get there, and we'll start off there.
All right, we'll start off there. So I started my career in financial services, like you briefly mentioned. And I should say before that, I had a brief stop in retail, sales management, stuff of that nature, because at 16 years old, I started selling cell phones and pagers, for those of you that are 40 plus years old, at Circuit City, and then transitioned to Best Buy with some work after I stopped playing football in college, and then subsequently dropped out of college, took that sales manager role. I asked for a raise. They told me no, and I decided I had to go. And so then that's when I started my financial service career, where no one was going to control my income but me. And started in that business and built a beautiful book of business servicing mostly business owners, because that's who I really identified with, helping them with their financial planning, helping them with their risk-based needs, stuff of that nature. And as I was growing through it, I realized that I really had a passion and proclivity for leadership. So I started mentoring and recruiting and developing younger advisors and just showing them the game, showing them how to make it. Because in that industry, for those that don't know, there's a 7% retention over 5 years. 7%. And it's a hard business to really make it successful in. So anyone that makes it past 5 years, they've done something right, they've grinded it out, whatever it may be. So I really fell in love with the leadership side of things, even though I had built this beautiful individual practice. And then the Fortune 80 company that I represented tapped me on the shoulder and said, would you like to buy and succeed your father. So buy him out and succeed my father and take over the whole firm. And I happily said yes. And so I sold my individual book to another advisor in my firm that I had a great deal of respect for, because I want to make sure my clients were well taken care of. And I considered him smarter than me, so I knew that they were going to be well taken care of, and proceeded to run the big firm. So I had 250. So I grew it. So when I took over from my father, we had this rapid growth. Like, I had taken all the lessons that I learned from him, some of the stuff to do, some of the stuff not to do, as we learn from leaders, right? And we grew from 1 billion in assets, and in 5 years up to 4 billion in assets, and grew the employee and advisor base. So at the point of my exit, I had about 110 advisors, 250 staff. So it was a pretty large firm. I encompass all of southern Wisconsin, northern Illinois. So to make that story turn a little bit, because it wasn't when I said
we all have
exit,
turns.
We all have turns. And when I say exit, people are like, oh, that's great. You get paid out, whatnot. My exit was not a happy exit. So in 2021, we get through the majority of the heavy COVID period. We had grown the firm 30% through 2020. A lot of great things going on, a lot of great momentum. However, I had one leader on my team that was a true narcissist. One of my failures in that was that I had developed plenty of immature leaders into being good, functioning adults. My hubris had told me I could do it for this person. What I didn't see, or what I was chalking up to immaturity, were actual character flaws. And so now I can see that, hindsight being 2020. That being said, to make a long story short, this leader decided to sue me for discrimination on complete lies. And by the way, I have a lot to say about the judicial system and the civil suits and all that jazz. But essentially, you can lie about someone all you want, and there's really no recourse. I'm like, how can I not countersue for defamation or slander? And my attorney is saying that it has to be outside the bounds of this case. So if we catch him slip and talk crap about you on something unrelated, then we can do that. I'm like, that makes zero sense, but I digress. So the point being is that the company, even though they had investigated me and done everything to ensure that we were running a great culture, I was running a good business, and that I didn't do the things that he said, they proved me innocent. That being said, as soon as he sued me, a month later, they terminated me to get themselves out of the lawsuit.
Yeah.
And so then I spent 6 months negotiating with them, contemplated a wrongful termination suit, decided not to go against a $300 billion behemoth, but it took 6 months to negotiate that exit. But that was everything I had ever known. Like, so to give you guys perspective, ever since I was 9 months old, I had known that company. My father started when I was 9 months old. So every annual meeting, I was there from 1 year old till 40 years old, essentially. Because COVID, we had to skip that year of getting together. So it was like my family reunion. I had planned to spend the rest of my career with them, growing the business as big as possible. And so to have that all shatter in just one fell swoop, and especially not because I did something wrong, or not because I ran a bad business or I wasn't doing a good job, but because someone lied about me to further their own career, like, it felt like getting stabbed from the front and the back. It's like, okay, I got betrayed by this person, but then also the company that I had poured my blood, sweat, and tears into and had all this loyalty and immense amount of respect for decides, yeah, sorry, Josh, thanks for your years, but you're out. And so it was just this massive, massive grief and betrayal and all those feelings that I had to sort through in that transition. And we can get more into that, but I'll pause there.
Well, Donald Miller has the book Hero on a Mission. I'm not sure if you've read it. Hopefully the audience has read it. It's a phenomenal book, and really talks about the different characters of every marketing story, every great movie. There's the hero, there is the guide. You think about Star Wars, right? And then also there's the victim and the villain. And I wonder, in this case, is what have you learned through that to help you become the hero of your own story and not be the victim, not be the villain?
That's a really good question. I haven't read that book, but now I'm going to put it on my list. I've read some of Donald Miller's other work. So one of the things is you are the villain in someone's story. That is one lesson to be taken. Whether you are a leader, whether you're just any human walking this earth, all of us have a villain that we've turned ourselves into a villain in someone's story in their eyes. But the biggest lessons were this. As I was going through this, I stayed with my business coach. He had convinced me to stay even though I was trying to push him away, and he was wise, and I'm glad that he didn't let me push him away because I did need him. I was thinking in my simple mind, what are we going to talk about? I'm not in business right now. And he goes, Josh, I think you're going to need me more now than ever. And he was right. So stick with your coaches. There's lesson one. But secondly, he was asking me about 3 months into it. He goes, and I won't use the villain's name in this instance, but he goes, hey, I see you having a lot more empathy for that person that sued you. Like, you're doing a good job there. How are you doing for yourself? I said, what do you mean? He goes, how much empathy do you have for Josh? And I was like, I don't know. Like, I was trying to push it off. But the reality or the answer was I wasn't having any empathy for myself. I was just trying to get through day to day. And so I think that a lot of us have this issue is like, okay, we can get through forgiveness. We can get to forgiveness. We can get to empathy. Because the reason I was having empathy for him is like, the reason he acted like that wasn't because of something that I did. It was because of something in his childhood that he's still a broken child in an adult's body. And I could get my mind to that. And now I still wasn't having empathy for me and this adult version of me and what just happened to me and all this different like I wasn't coming to grips with it. I was getting through the stages of grief, but I wasn't coming to the grips of having empathy for what I just had to go through. But so as much as what I decided right away was that I was going to take the summer off. It happened June 16th, 2021. And I was like, I'm going to spend the summer with my kids. I'm not going to make any decisions. I'm getting calls from every financial institution across the country. And I'm not taking any meetings, any calls till after the summer's over. I thought by the end of the summer, we'd have negotiated the exit. I was wrong. And by the time I got them back in school, I am going batty because I'm not being of service.
Yeah.
So there's another lesson there is like we as human beings are meant to be of service. I had by about September decided that I wasn't going to accept an offer from any financial institution. That God was telling me that I had accomplished everything I set out to in that industry, and it was time to blaze a different trail. However, I couldn't go public with that because my leverage against them in the negotiation was that I would start another firm or join another firm and take all my advisors with me because I had great relationships with those advisors and those employees. So I'm handcuffed. I can't do anything. I can't move. I can't operate. I can't act into my new vision. And so I had to really learn to come to grips with my emotions. So those 6 months that it took to negotiate was a beautiful blessing. And so I learned to grieve. I learned to get through that stuff, but I also relearned how to envision the future and learn about what was next. And I did this really simple, stupid exercise that ended up not being so stupid. I drew a line down a piece of paper like a T-chart, and I said, on the left side, what did I love about my previous world and career? And on the right side, what did I hate? And, on the hate side was like FINRA, compliance, SEC, narcissistic advisors, whatever. Okay. And then I asked the question, what if I could design a world that I only did the stuff that I loved? Pouring into people, developing them, helping them see visions that they wouldn't otherwise see for themselves, helping them solve issues before they have to face them. All those different things I did in developing people and leading people. I'm like, okay, I can lean into this coaching, speaking, impacting people. Okay, how do I do that? Well, our good friend Jordan Montgomery had gone down that path before, so I reached out to him. I have another good friend, Ben Newman, who's one of the top 5 mindset coaches in the world. Reached out to him and started exploring and fact-finding, okay, how do I want this to look? And then my wife goes, yeah, Josh, I don't want you traveling like Jordan or Ben.
Yeah.
And I said, fair. We have 4 young children, and they're younger at that time, 3 years ago. I said, and then I had this like spiritual awakening, like, if you build it, they'll come. Like, feel the dreams. And I immediately called my realtor and said, find me 80 to 100 acres. I didn't have any money at that. I mean, I had money, but not money to buy 80 to 100 acres until this buyout came. So this was like, again, September. And we started looking. And then I told two people about this. The second person was one of my friends that is one of those friends that only see every 6 months, but you pick her right up where you left off. And he goes, Josh, have you seen this property? And it shows me this beautiful video. It must have cost like $50,000 to get this video done. And I'm like, no, it's not even listed on MLS. And is being advertised in equestrian magazines and such because he was trying to sell the LLC to save on taxes, which is smart. Good lesson there. Instead of list it like a normal home. Another God wink. I come out here to visit this property. And I'm asked to sign an NDA. And they go, I go, why am I signing an NDA? I'm viewing a property. The owner's just really private. I said, well, who is he if I'm signing this? And you can't make this up. It was the person that built Jen and I's first home.
Oh, wow.
And so we start conversing and I tell him my vision and we talk, get into financials and stuff of that nature. And I said, I don't know when this negotiation is going to end. And he goes, I love your vision. What do you think about a land contract? I know you're good for the money. He's another believer as well. And I was like, Randy, this is a lot of money. Like, why would you do that? Like, I know we know each other, but he goes, God's telling me to do it. He goes, I know you're good for it. And I can't make this up. I closed my deal with my old company, December 29th, 2021. And I closed on the property that I'm sitting in today on December 30th, the day after.
So let me go back to a little bit what you said is, one of the things that I'm just wondering, whether it's what you've learned to avoid through all of that and what to seek, because there's a part of I avoided something, or as your coach said, man, have you empathy for yourself? Have you forgiven yourself? Have you processed yourself? Or is it external? So there's a question there is what leads you to understand or believe that you're the villain in someone's story? Help me discern how you got there and how that process is now productive for you moving forward.
Yeah. So one thing that I would never claim in my life, I got on a tangent, Tyler. Sorry. I was talking got on the story.
No,
but,
you're good. We'll come back around. It's a conversation, man.
How I got there was this. I would never, ever accept being a victim. So I don't care what happens to me. I cannot stand victimhood. I can't stand it when I see it on social media. And not to say that you aren't, like, someone's not a victim of a crime or isn't a victim of something like I was. That being said, to reside in that presence of being a victim, I just couldn't see for myself. That's not the example that I would ever want to set for my kids. And so my mind was clear on that from the get-go, is that regardless of how badly I felt screwed over, I am not the victim in this story. And then you take that a step further, is if my mission is to inspire and impact lives, which, by the way, that was my mission when I ran the firm, and it continues to this day, is that I am no inspiration and I'm having no impact sitting as a victim, regardless of how badly I was screwed over. And so if I'm resound in my purpose and I'm resound in the fact that the example I want to set for the people that I love most, like, I'm just not going to do that. So my mind was made up very clearly on that. Now you go back to lessons and how people, like, I am very adept now at dealing with narcissists, and I can spot them like this. So that's a lesson that I've learned in having to have dealt with this person, because this person, like, I cared for deeply. Like, I gave them $10,000 worth of custom clothes, like suits, out of my own closet, had them at my dinner table, like, spent week after week mentoring and developing them. And so I got to know that person very intimately before he screwed me over. So that's another lesson, though, is like, in hindsight, we get a lot of clarity and a lot of lessons that were learned. I truly believe this, that God puts every single person in our life for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. And it's upon us to figure out which one of those three it is. That person was in my life not only for a reason, but also a season. He's just not allowed in my life for a lifetime now.
So again, kind of your opinion. One is, where did that ideology of I'm not going to be a victim, which again, take this question, right? I applaud that, right? Much like the book I mentioned earlier, it's like, let's be the hero. But I want to know from your perspective or your background why you said, I will not be that. Because so many people in our society are willing to be that in so many different ways.
So if I had to pinpoint it, it would have been my upbringing with my father. So if I had to pinpoint it, but it's been an evolution since then. It was like, we have to ask ourselves, how do we want to be remembered? And we have to have a inclination and knowing that we are mortal. And so if we keep an eye on, what Stephen Covey always taught us, begin with the end in mind, it's bringing that back to present day is how do I want to operate as a human? And so for me, yes, there was some tough love from my father growing up, rub some dirt on it, don't cry, stuff of that nature that, the old guard of dads taught us all.
Yeah,
Which
exactly.
there's some good in that and some bad. That being said, like he was never ever going to let me play victim. But that being said, I also formed my own opinion on that, not necessarily just taking because there's certain things my dad did that I would never do to my kids. That being said, that lesson I formed my own opinion on, and I said, yeah, I agree with that opinion. And it's also forming like, I literally loathe anyone that plays the victim because I've experienced so many beautiful people that had such tough starts at life, that have debilitating diseases, disabilities, whatever it may be, and they chose never to play the victim. Why would a healthy human being like you or I, that has all four limbs, that has a good functioning brain, that has the health to be able to work out as much as you and I do, that can do that can be as successful and use our minds and bodies and whatever we want, like, why would we have any justification to ever play the victim when we've had other people in our lives that have been dealt such a tough hand and still are finding joy and still finding success and still finding so much fulfillment in their lives? Just never resonated with me. So I would say pinpoint it, my dad, and then evolution of thought and experiences from that.
So part of that, to me, and again, just wondering, right? That's a pretty tough experience for you, your family, your dad. I would imagine got involved in somehow because it was his previous business, not that far removed, right? I mean, this is a bam on the family, and I've gone through some of that. I've gone through my own personal journey of having to deal something, not to the extent of yourself, but something that hit the family square between the eyes. And I wonder and think, part of, one of our conversations a few weeks ago, right? We were on Facebook, just kind of messaging back and forth, and part of it is this idea of, and I want to go back to what your coach said is, man, have you given empathy to yourself? Is the idea of, man, I got to own all this and protect everyone. And if I don't slow down and learn from it, if I'm actively avoiding, then I'm not serving others. And so I think about that case that you ran in, whether it's your wife, Jenna, or, maybe your dad saying, all right, Josh, we got to deal with this, go through this, or your coach go through this with you. Just help it, myself and others understand, what was that like to put your arms around people or people that put their arms around you?
I think it was harder on them than it was on me, honestly.
Okay.
And I've told people this often because, a lot of people that know my dad because of where we were for so long, like, how's your dad doing? And I'll be like, and especially if they pinpoint to say with this situation, I said, honestly, I think that he took it harder than me. And, uh, and he's still probably a little bitter to this day. And partly from a protectionism, like not only did he not think it was right, not only did it ruin the family legacy per se, but also, protectionism of his son. And so there are parts of that. However, what I will say to you in this is that, when you go through something like that, you're really left with two choices. You can crawl in a hole, and I could have, and people would have been, yeah, that was justified. Him getting kicked off the mountain in the way that he did, I could see why he didn't recover from that. Or I could try the hero's journey and try to work through all my crap and get through it and work through all the emotions and climb the mountain again and show my kids the path that, hey, cause here's something I always lean on, and actually makes me emotional even thinking about it. I've always taught my kids, what do we do when we fall down? Get back up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So who would I be if I didn't pick myself back up?
I think that's one of the greatest examples in leadership is the humility, the vulnerability, the authenticity to, it's something that I talk in my community and on this platform a lot is I had to learn authentic vulnerability and realizing that was just putting my arms in the air and not try to be this facade of what others perceived me to be and me leaning into and thinking that was going to be the worth or value or strength I had. That my true strength in the ability to serve others and do exactly what you just did is to get knocked down and say, yep, that I, I don't want to say I deserved it, but sometimes there's a little bit you get kicked in the teeth and it's like, yeah, all right, you got to roll with that. That's just part of life. And it's like, do you crawl into that hole like you talked about, or do you get up and say, yep, I got to own it. Let's go on. And I think that leads me to the next question is like, man, couple years removed, whether those are now, wounds still open or scars that hopefully that have healed those wounds. What are you learning today? What are you learning today as you're talking to your kids? What are you learning today as you're talking to your clients?
Well, first of all, if you ask my kids if they like what I do now versus then, they'll pick now.
Yeah.
all day, every day, twice on Sundays. But you actually said something there, deserved it. I think I did deserve it. And not because I wasn't a good leader. It's because I was a poor follower of Christ.
Ooh. Okay.
I put position, money, success, even that company above Christ.
Mm.
So a lot of people think that idols are other gods. I think a lot of even believers think of idols, they think of other gods. An idol is anything and everything that you put above God. And that could be money. Let's break this down even further. That could be your wife. That could be your kids. That could be a sport, an NFL team that you're obsessed with. Those are all
I
idols.
don't want to go into NFL teams. I know you're a Bears fan. I'm a Browns fan. All right. So just a moment of silence for my life. At least you have like the 86 Bears. Okay, dude. I got to go back to the 60s when the Browns were, really at the top of the mountain. And no one cares about the pre-Super Bowl. So that's a little divergence. Let's go back to the idols, what you're talking about.
But the idols piece, and so there's also platitudes that people put out there too, like God won't give you more than you can handle. Bullshit. I say bullshit. In fact, I think he will, so that it points you back to him. And know that the only way that you're going to get through, the only way I was getting through that was through him. If I didn't have God,
I'd throw a layer on that. I'd throw a layer on that. I think he will absolutely break you to bring him to you. And I've experienced and seen some of that. But not just between you and him. It means you, me, and him.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the great strength is. And it comes back to one of my beliefs. What is empathy? Putting your arms around someone and walking with them. And God wants us to find those people to walk with us because that's what makes us stronger believers. As he talks about is like, hey, where any two are, I'm there too. Right. And it's not you alone because we're not strong enough to do it alone. So I love what you're saying there. And I think it is, he will break you down to say, you can't do it on your own with me. You have to do it with others that walk with you.
And my wife was that. And she's been the greatest point of strength in my life with Christ and with her as a family, like unbelievable strength. I mean, yeah, I could go on for days about her. That being said, greatest lesson you asked. They are scars now. I can look back and I will never speak anything bad of the company I represented. I will never speak bad about my experience because it helped me form me into who I am today. Even that experience, as tough as it was, the greatest lesson I took from it is that sometimes the worst things that happen to you in life are the best things that happen for you.
Absolutely.
And I'm 100% a better leader, husband, father, everything today than I was 3.5 years ago.
It took me 24 years to get to that point. We're sitting 3.5 years later for you. When did you come to that point and realize, okay, this is what it's all about. This is why this was I'm going to turn this for good.
I think it was stages, Tyler. So God speaks in silence. And so I'll give you one example. Within a week, I don't remember how many days of that termination, I'm in my basement crying. And anytime I'd receive a text or call from, one of my team members, advisors, whatever, saying that, what I meant to them, I'd cry more, right? Because I wasn't there anymore. But I'm sitting there crying by myself, and God whispered, "You're free." And in my head and ego, I'm sitting there going, I didn't want to be free. I was happy with what I was doing. I was doing very well at what I was doing. And then there's furthermore stages. You get through the grief, you get through some clarity. I get through the negotiation. I'm able to start coaching and being of service to the world again. And I would say it was probably a good year that I was able to start. I actually gave a talk. I worked with a speech coach and have him. I had to get all my thoughts out on paper. And I was giving this talk to a group of people and other entrepreneurs, and it was here at the farm. And I said, this was going to be the most important talk I ever give because it's the first time I'm going to tell my story. And so I wrote it all out. And Matt, my speech coach, he's like, I delivered it via Zoom like we're talking here. And he goes, "Did you write that all out?" And he goes, I was like, "Yeah." He goes, "You're not going to deliver it like that, are you?" I was like, "No, I just needed to get it all out." And he goes, "That's good. Now don't deliver it like that. And just remember one thing, leave room for God. Because if you're memorizing a speech, if you're not in the moment then, and you're not able to leave room for God's whispers, God's downloads, for you to be able to convey the message that he wants that audience to receive." And so I think through the process, and one of the things that my coach did, not the speech coach, the one that didn't allow me to push me away during my grief as well, was he made me journal. I'd always known the benefits of journaling. I just never did it. I never took the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I'm in my deepest grief, and he goes, "Josh, journal." And I go, "No." And he goes, "Josh, trust me, journal." I'm like, "You just want me to write all the sad and screwed up thoughts I have right now?" He's like, "Yeah." He goes, "Get it out. You will never have these exact emotions, these exact thoughts ever again." And now they're going to be a part of my book. But I can remember some of the quotes I would write down were a lot of them from my kids, like, "Daddy, why aren't you in your work clothes?" At that time, custom suits, really nice suits. I dressed really nice. Now I can wear whatever I want. I can wear a t-shirt like Tyler and look all buff, but I don't have to. So I got, I don't know, $20,000, $30,000 worth of custom suits collecting dust in my closet that I break out for a wedding every once in a while. But all right. So one of the most powerful things I wrote in that journal, and I now effectively call it my pain journal, but I go back to it, and it's also helping me write the book that's going to come out next year. 2 words. They're watching. They're watching. And I was talking about my kids at that time, but it turns out it wasn't just them. Everyone was watching. Everyone that I had ever had an impact on was watching to see if I would pick myself back up after getting knocked down so hard.
As you share that in thinking about your kids, and I believe this, the greatest, in coming back to it, the greatest strength that we can show others is our vulnerability. As you think about your 3 daughters and your son, and you think about leading them, you think about leading others, and in my opinion, I know this matches yours, it doesn't matter if we're leading at home or leading at work, it's the same type of work. Where have you been able, or what has been exposed? You mentioned a little bit earlier about, the identity, the idols, all of those things, and fixating on that and feeling freed from it. But where were those either insecurities, or where were those attachments to that identity really, I guess, centered, that you can go to your daughters, you can go to your son and say, or in the book, you can go to others and say, "Hey, beware of this because I've walked that path."
Yeah. So the framework that I built now is this leads me into that, is called the 5 bridges. And what I really learned through this was Obviously, I talked about not putting God first. So the bridge number one is spiritual. And so bridge number one is spiritual. We have to, whether you're Christian like Tyler or I or not, we all know that there is a spirit within us. We've all been to a funeral, a visitation, whatever it may be, and we see the flesh and the soul or spirit is gone. So we know that there's a spiritual being to us, and we have to get right with that. So for you and I, that's God, and pointing to God and making sure that relationship with God is just so good. We have to get right with that first. Because if we're not right with our own spirit, it affects every downstream thing that we try and do. We're counterintuitively working away from our natural ethos and being. So then I got to bridge two. So I focus, like, before I go to bridge two, actually, let me clarify. Our profession, our success, money, accolades, goals, all that stuff, like, I think this is ingrained in us from birth almost. Like, we ask our kids, hey, what do you want to be when you grow up? And then that's reinforced in high school. It's like, hey, where do you want to go to college and what do you want to do with that? And then you get to college, it's like, well, now that you got this degree, what are you going to do with that? And it's always the what. And it's never asking our kids, who do you want to be when you grow up? And why? And how? And so I think that's natural. It's part of our society, but it's wrong. Okay, so this is where I formed the bridges and had that deep reflection over those 6 months. So after we start working down that spiritual bridge, it's now getting to bridge two, which I call internal. And internal is not only our emotional and mental well-being, but also our physical well-being. So my dad was really good at this. He taught me taking care of you is the most selfless thing you can do. And a lot of people would disagree with him. And he's like, no, hear me out. If you're not well, you can't care for others the way that you want to. So I've, adopted, and many people have said this, but it's the perfect analogy. So we just keep repeating it, is if once you get on an airplane, the flight attendants tell you if the oxygen masks drop, you apply yours first before assisting others. It's the same principle. If we're not right mentally, emotionally, and physically, we cannot serve others to the highest degree. So internal is bridge two. Bridge three, we get to relationships. Relationships are the fruit of life. They're what makes everything tick. If you think just back a few years to COVID, and I know it seems so long ago, but part of the biggest struggle is the isolation. We are, as human beings, are built for community. So I'll tell you guys a quick aside. My COO at the time, she's highly introverted. And I'm like, of all the 250 people I have, she is going to be fine. Like, she's going to relish this, like being away from all these people, not having to deal with their bullshit. Like, she's going to be good. She was not. She was not good. Of all the phone calls I was receiving tonight, and she was in charge of keeping my staff sane, I had to keep her sane. Now, because being an introvert by choice is a one thing, but being introverted by force is a different thing. And she was not mentally well in those time periods. Isolation is not good for any human being. We were built for community. We were built for relationships. So now it's how do we make our relationships as strong as possible with our core people? So it's God first, self second. If you're married, it's your spouse, then your kids, then everyone else. And our job is to not screw up that order. So if we nail those first three bridges, then we get to what I call our environment. And our environment includes professional, financial, and don't forget joy, fun, hunting for you and I, like all the different stuff that makes life tick. But we focus so much on bridge four as we get out of college and we're trying to build a career and stuff like that. We just completely ignore the first three bridges. And we're just so focused on that. And if we fall into the trap of being highly successful, it's a good trap. Like, we want to be successful in our lives, but it's still a trap, because how many entrepreneurs have we worked with? How many entrepreneurs have we known that are on their third marriages, have estranged relationships with their kids, have a problem with alcohol or drugs or gambling or pornography? Because they didn't take care of the first three bridges. They didn't take care of themselves. They didn't take care of their relationships that they should have. And now they're going to die on their deathbed alone with hearts full of regret. So that's why we have to cross those first three bridges first.
One thing that you and I didn't have to deal with that is now the next generation. So my 16-year-old son, my 15-year-old son, as their community, you know what the vice in that one that you're talking about, that advice? that's been identified as just as detrimental as drugs, alcohol, and pornography? Sports betting.
Oh, sports betting. I was going to
Sports
say
betting.
social media, but
Sports betting. It is being identified as causing just as many like debilitating problems, financial problems. They're starting to identify now. It's crazy. So
wow.
that was a tangent, but
Because it's on our fingertips so easily, where you and I had to go find a bookie.
yeah, or go to a casino or whatever it may be. And now it is, and it's almost like one of the things that one of my sons brought up with me. It's like, well, that way I can enjoy the game. I'm like, dude, if you need to gamble on a game to enjoy it, you're watching for all the wrong reasons. And whoever's leading you to that is leading you down a very dangerous path. It's no different. And I know, but this is a part of my environment, so it's good. It's no different than people that say, hey, I can't have fun at a party unless I drink. Oh, I can't go to a corporate event and like loosen up unless I drink. That idea of the environment, if you need a vice, and I've heard you talked about this, is you have to be careful of what's going on around you. And some of these vices all tie into this bridge of environment. And that's a hard bridge to get through.
Yeah.
Takes a lot of courage, a lot of internal strength, which to me comes from the previous three bridges to navigate that bridge.
Yes. Because take bridge 2, for example, having strong mental and emotional health comes along with having that self-confidence, self-worth, and the pinnacle of it is actually self-efficacy. If you're so strong in your core being and you know who you are and you know whose you are, which is more important, you're going to be less likely to fall into those traps, sports betting, pornography, or whatever the vice may be. And so if we do a great job on those 4 bridges, we get to bridge 5, which is our legacy. And legacy is not what you leave behind. It is not what you leave behind. It is who you leave your gifts in. It's the impact that you have on a daily basis on those that you love and those that you have the opportunity to lead or impact. No one, like, you leave. So I have some boots of my father-in-law's. I have a knife of my father-in-law's, and those are great trinkets to remember him. But if I lose those, I don't lose the lessons that he left in me that I can teach his grandkids, my kids.
And going back to, one of the things that you shared, and I think that you've identified in this conversation, is the identity of what your legacy was before you essentially getting kicked in the face was way different than what it is now. And I think it's just a testament of showing you to be able to show others, like, don't put your legacy in dollars or possessions or trinkets. Put your legacy in your impact of others, which is why I'm impact driven leader. It's the same thing. And I love how you got there.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Thank you. And the interesting piece of that was I never saw this, but now I see it. What others saw of me was this straight, like, incline, like Josh's career and success going like this, even though any entrepreneur knows it goes like a stock chart up and down. But that's all they saw. Once they saw this straight decline and then me start to climb, like, they had a whole different perspective, a whole different hope, a whole different respect, a whole different view of me. And it's interesting because internally, like, I feel like I'm still the same person. Like, I still feel like I was leading with impact and inspiration and love. That being said, the paradigm shift of those that were around me that were, previously led by me in that firm, and others that just observed me in the community or otherwise, their paradigm shift was monumental.
Give me some examples.
Well, that's a good question. So interestingly enough, like, a guy my dad recruited back in 1994. He switched firms in the mid 90s. So he wasn't even a part of our firm, and or late 90s, I should say, yeah. And we remained acquaintances, but also competitors. He calls me and comes to ask me to go to lunch. So at some point in that 6 months, I was still in negotiation, not doing anything. So I had time for lunch, and I had a lot of time for golf events at that time. But he asked me to go to lunch, and I didn't really know the context, but we had a healthy enough respect for him. I'm like, okay, cool, go to lunch. And he's like, Josh, I just want to tell you that what you went through, most people would have folded. And just seeing you operate in the community, nothing but respect, and continuing to move is really inspiring. And just like his words in that moment were really impactful. Now you fast forward a couple years where I've started that ascent again, and I get people that reach out to me now that realize that I'm not superhuman. Like this happens to everyone, and they have maybe gone through their own trials and tribulations and are now reaching out and be like asking questions like you're asking today. How the hell did you go through that? Like I'm going through divorce right now, or I got this problem. Uh, like I need help, and you seem to have been gone through something really terrible and gotten through it. Like how did you do that? And so like we may just have one conversation or it may turn into a coaching relationship, but it's just interesting the attraction power of having to go on through adversity, showing resilience and beginning that climb again and just charging forward a better way, a better person. It's been interesting to see different people surface that I may have not talked to for 10 years, 20 years, whatever, that are reaching out and going, how?
Yeah. I mean, I can relate to that. I think, part of that relation is understanding that, so often as parents or as leaders, we try to limit the adversity others go through, and we do more to harm them than help them. Instead of limit the adversity, just be there to walk with them through the adversity. Because it's, like your business coach, like you talked about, there's those people, the Bens, the Jordans that are willing to walk through. It's like, yeah, we talked earlier before we got on camera about John Maxwell, and I can share about a friend who John has walked through and what he's doing and how he's come through that. And he was at the pinnacle of his industry and absolutely burnt everything down. And John's like, no, I'm here with you because I know you. And I think part of that leadership and that capacity to serve is understanding we all go through adversity. And sometimes the worst thing that we can do is hide from that adversity instead of embrace it. And I believe there's a societal charge that says, hey, if you have adversity, you need to kind of hide it and don't let other people see it, instead of saying, yep, I went through it and this is how I got through it.
It's funny you say that. I'm smiling because there's this wife of a former advisor of mine, and we have a mutual friend who I was golfing with this past summer. And he's like, I don't know why she brings your name up every time I'm around her. And she's like, and one of her comments was like, he got terminated, right? And she was trying to talk poorly of me or make him think poorly of me, one of the two.
Yeah.
And I don't know why, but doesn't matter why. And I just said, I laughed at him. I said, yeah, I did. And I wish the best for her as well. Like it's just dirt off the shoulders, water off the back, whatever you want to use in that. The point is that others are going to say stuff, others are going to do stuff. And the point I always lean into is what you put out in the world is what you're going to get back. If she's putting out that I hope he loses or I hope people look poorly about him because of the adversity that he faces, that's only going to go back to her. If I wish her nothing but success and laugh at her comments because it doesn't really affect me one way or the other, that's going to come back to me as well.
I think about that at times, and in how much, I relate it to vulnerability. If we're vulnerable, authentically vulnerable, yes, I've gone through this. This is what I'm dealing with. The other person can't use it against you. I think about a sports instance. Like, we think about it in football. You played fan, and it's like if we sit here and say, hey, we know that team sucks at defense, their run defense sucks, right? We're going to run it all day long. Well, that plays to their advantage because they know that's what they got to work on. Then we don't have to worry about, our pass defense. And again, once you're vulnerable, and yeah, that's where we struggle, it becomes a strength if you can cater to that strength and saying, yeah, I was terminated, in your words, like, yeah, okay. So are you going to use that against me? I'm accepting it and owning it. And what you've shared with me today in the audience is, man, there were so many things that were coming at me that it would have been worse almost if that didn't happen. And yet God took me in a place and said, nope, I got something better for you. And this is what you're going to do, as opposed to continue on the path and just blinders on and I'm going to make it worse, instead of, taking that moment, as you said you did, to work with your coach and continue, as opposed to say, no, you're dead to me, I'm going to continue on. That's acceptance. And to me, that's what often, to me, that leads to accountability, right? It's just example of accountability. That's where so many leaders struggle today, because they aren't vulnerable enough to be accountable and hold others accountable.
And that allows them not to actually experience the greatest things in this life, because we're all human, and others are going to look at you and be like, you're not superhuman. You don't get through life unscathed. None of us do. And so the fact that you won't show your vulnerability makes me not trust you as a leader. And so that's where they're really missing the boat, is they're missing this trust, openness, and these amazing relationships they could have if they would just open up more and actually show their real side instead of this fake facade of perfection.
Well, there's even a belief for me, it's that, it's almost a culture of, whether it's, talk about Midwestern dad, German background, a tough as nails dad. I have a similar one, right? And, there's elements of show no weakness, right? And that's kind of an element of a culture and society. And man, that does so much harm. And the greatest strength, as it's talked about biblically, but I also see in others, is the person that's willing to get on their knees. And I think that's such a challenge in our society, because we look at sometimes at leaders, and we're like, we expect them to be infallible, and yet the ones that are infallible are the ones that you need to be most concerned about. It's the ones that are coming back and to use your words earlier, yeah, I got terminated, that are the ones like, okay, yeah, I'll go with you, because you're not trying to put a false, a facade on that isn't true. And I think that's what gets so many leaders in trouble, is they think they need to be this uber, masculine, strong, in your face, intense, as we've talked about at times, leader. And it's like, you're going to do more harm than good. It's the level 5 leader from Jim Collins that is, that pinnacle, that legacy, it's focused there, that I believe those are the best leaders. You may not think they're like this, picture of this warrior type, but it's like, nope, those are the ones that are going to move mountains. It's just my thought. I don't know what your thoughts are.
No, I think that's perfect. I was thinking you should be strong, you should be masculine, and you should be vulnerable and authentic. It's like that dichotomy is, and that's why I think you and I connect so well, is because the dichotomy between those, like most men out there especially think that it has to be one or the other. Like you can't show vulnerability or weakness, otherwise you're not strong and masculine, when it's exactly the opposite. And that's where I think a lot of the toxic masculinity, quote, I'm using air quotes for those just listening, because that's what society's kind of pushed out there. That's where they've gotten it wrong. And that's where those leaders are getting it wrong. True masculinity is being able to show vulnerability, is being able to show weakness and show your courage in getting through fear, and showing authenticity while being as strong as possible, being able to mess someone up if they're threatening your family, and while being able to be strong and courageous through the storm. That's what true masculinity is. And it's just gotten perverted or twisted nowadays in our culture.
Well, I think what happens for, when I think about, that's the male perspective, when I think about the female perspective. And unfortunately, so many women in leadership feel they have to be not themselves. They have to be almost this insensitive, this, not caring, not naturally empathetic. They have to be hard and crass, because that's what they see, or they've gone through experiences. Unless you're that, you're not getting promoted. It's like, we don't need more of that. We need more of your magic gifts that God gave you. That's the style of leadership. And it's not this what you're not. And I think that's where the whole ball of wax gets messed up, instead of saying, be the great you that you are, and be vulnerably and authentic. That, coming back to what you said earlier, not the victim. And I would contend, not the villain, right? Don't aim to be the villain in that thinking. That's more fortuitous, and I can't wait for you to read the book and follow up on this, but be the hero. And then after that, go guide people.
Learn the lessons, give them away.
As we wrap up here, one thing I'd love for you to share, it just kind of either final thoughts or a final question is what do you think from all of this is the greatest legacy that you can give to not only your kids, but others?
I think it's that paradigm shift of the 5 bridges. I think that so much of us in society are taught, because we're in such a materialistic country. If you travel the world and see some of the kids that are happy with nothing, some of the adults that are happy with nothing, and see the joy and exuberance and fulfillment that they have in their lives, I think that's some of the beauty of travel, is it allows you to open up your worldview in that. I think so. The beauty of the 5 bridges that I created and understanding the order is going to be the biggest impact that I leave on this world, at least at this point. I'm hoping 10 years from now, 20 years from now, there's possibly even something greater. But I think that the hardship, the pain that I went through wasn't for nothing, that it was to learn this lesson, to give it back to the world, to learn that we are spiritual beings and we need to be right with that, to learn that this internal mechanism, like taking care of ourselves, is not a selfish endeavor. It is a selfless endeavor. Now, can you go over the line and make it selfish? Sure. However, if you're doing it for the right reasons, to be 100%, because one of my sayings at the end of my rec talks that I give every day is be the best hour of someone's day. That's my intent, is like I literally reset myself before I got on this podcast, before I get into any meeting, is I want to be the best hour of Tyler's day. I want to be the best hour of whoever's this coaching client is in front of me. If we all had that posture, if we all took that posture on a daily basis, like the world would change in an instant. Like my goal or my mission today is to be the best hour of this person's day. And if everyone took that posture, it'd be like that pay it forward line at Starbucks. Like we just keep paying it forward and paying it forward and paying it forward. And so I think that being that internal bridge is so crucial to get right. And then the relationships, making sure that we don't sacrifice what's most important just to get ahead on the success side. And then obviously, God wants us to be successful. I think there's a misnomer in the Christian community that that you have to be poor to be a follower of Jesus. And that's not what the Bible says. That's not what the word says. You were given divine, unique gifts. So if God put in you to be a massive success, do it. But do it for the kingdom, not for yourself. And run after it with all you can. And then you get those 4 right. Your legacy is going to be amazing.
Where can people either connect, learn more about you, learn more about 5 Bridges Farm? Where can they go to find that stuff?
So SEO is great for me. I'm sure, like you with that German last name, Josh Kosnick on all platforms. I'm the only Josh Kosnick I've seen out there on any platform.
You're lucky.
So I'm not hard to
there's
find.
2 other Tyler Dickerhoofs. I'm the only bald one, and we're related. So I mean, it's a very unique name. But yeah, I mean, I love it.
Yeah, and then 5bridgesfarm.com is the website if you guys ever want to visit or create a dream event out at this space. It's a slice of heaven, and I got it to share with the world, not to keep it for myself. And so any events, any masterminds, any groups, any talks, any weddings, we had a couple political events here this fall. It was amazing. They kind of happened, and I was just open to it, and they became great blessings. It was really cool to see how they set up. So share that with the world. I put out in joshkosnick.com is the main website, and I put out a monthly newsletter just to continue to impact. But yeah, happy to help. Comment on these videos that Tyler puts out. Let me know what had the most impact on you, because I'd love to stay connected and hear what feedback you got.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time. And thank you to all of our viewers and listeners. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button as well, the bell, so that way you're notified whenever we release new content. And if you could do this, if you're listening on Spotify or Apple iTunes, if you could rate and review this episode, that way more people can find and hear impactful leaders like Josh. Thank you for being here today. And until next time, choose to lead with impact.